So we will talk about the postulates of morality, for this afternoon's discussion. The postulates of morality was proposed by the German philosopher, German moral philosopher Immanuel Kant. So by the way, Immanuel Kant is also one of the moral philosophers that we will give focus later on. So after we discuss the ethics or moral philosophy of Saint Thomas Aquinas, we will proceed to the moral philosophy of Immanuel Kant. So after we discuss Aristotle, we will proceed to Saint Thomas Aquinas, and then we jump to Immanuel Kant. So, but for now, maybe after our discussion, for this week, we will start with Aristotle, next meeting. For today, we will talk about the moral postulates by the philosopher Immanuel Kant. So, in his attempt to answer the question, why should I be moral? Or why ought I be moral? Ito yung question na nag-bother kay Immanuel Kant. Back in short, no, in our own translation, why should I be moral? Bakit kailangan natin maging matino, maging maayos, maging mabait, no? Maging mabuting tao? Why ought I be moral? In his attempt to answer the question, why should a person be moral, Immanuel Kant would refer us to the three moral postulates, the postulates of morality. And he identified three moral postulates. So the first one is the existence of free will and intellect. The other moral postulate is the immortality of the human soul. Immortality of the soul. The third moral postulate is the existence of God, or a supreme being. And so, what are moral postulates? Yan ang tanong. What is meant by the word postulate? To postulate something. So the word postulate is synonymous with the term to presume that something is true. So the three moral postulates, they are sort of moral presumptions. We presume that these things are real or true. So first presumption or moral postulate is the existence of free will and intellect. So what is a free will? It is our capacity to decide for our own actions. In other words, ito yung tinatawag natin freedom or free will. So we have the desire to do a certain action, and then we are there is free volition. What's meant by volition is that we voluntarily perform our own actions. So guided by our own free will, guided by our own intellect, then we desire to behave in a certain way out of our own volition. Kusang loob nating ginusto, kagustuhan nating ginawa ang isang bagay. So that's meant by free will and intellect. So for Immanuel Kant, we assume that it's real, no? The presence and existence of a free will is real. It cannot be doubted. Or, well, the argument of Immanuel Kant, kaya nga sinasabi niya dito na it is a presumption or it is a moral postulate, is that kumbaga we have a rational um, justification. In short, we have a reason to believe that the individual free will, the intellect, is true. We have founded with our rational capability, there is proof to believe in the or there is a strong argument, no, to believe in the existence of a free will, that we freely decide for our own actions, that it's possible to freely decide for our own actions. So what is the reason for this? Bakit kailangan na merong bakit kailangan that we should believe in what we call as free will? For certain obvious reasons, no? That we perform a certain action out of our own volition. Ano natin we as human beings, part of our capability is really to decide for ourselves. So even though it's hard to argue, no, it's hard to argue the existence of free will, but for Immanuel Kant, it needs to be presumed. It should be postulate of morality, because there are many philosophers also and other thinkers, so even social thinkers, would want to challenge the assumption of human free will, no? Meron kasing nagta-challenge na how about you? If I may ask you, do you believe in your own free will? Do you believe in your own free will? Na kusang loob niyong ginusto ang mga bagay-bagay, no? That you attend this class freely out of your own mature decision, no? To attend the class, okay? Mga ganyang bagay, no? Because some social thinkers would want to contest the idea of freedom, kasi para sa kanila at certain point we are determined with our own actions. Akala natin na we freely decide for such actions, but there are thinkers who would contest that because you have no other option, that's the only thing that's the best thing that you need to do. So as I have said, yun nga, marami ang nagko-contest, no, sa idea of free will, no. For example, in a sociological perspective, sinasabing yung choices natin is very limited, no, because of course it would be based on our social capability. For example, yung choice natin kung ano yung kukunin nating course, saan tayo mag-aral, all of these choices are in a sense determined to or depending on the available resources, no. So kung bakit halimbawa, no, kung bakit ikaw ay sa literal nag-aral, for example, probably because there are certain reasons, no? So in a sense, you are determined by those reasons. So kung bakit hindi sa halimbawa, no, bakit hindi sa ibang eskwelahan, o bakit hindi sa UP, bakit hindi sa kung saan nyo gusto, no, bakit hindi abroad, no. So the decisions are simply predetermined. Pwede nating sabihin kasing ganun, eh, no? Very limited with our capability. That's why we decide for this is already the best that we could hope for because of certain limitations. So in that kind of point of view, somewhat argue on the perspective that we are not really, shall we say, we are not really totally free, no, to determine our own future. Hindi natin kontrolado lahat anong mangyayari sa future. So in a sense, we are predetermined. So the argument on free will is not really true at all, no? Kasi hindi natin pwedeng gawin lahat, no? So for example, may nagdidebate, may narinig akong, may nabasa akong argument about human free will. So sabi nung isa, because they are into debate, sige nga, gawin mo to kung ano, kung talagang free ka, sige nga, gawin mo tong bagay na to, no? Patunayan mo na free ka. So yung isa naman, sabi naman niya, ayoko nga. Bakit ako susunod sa iyo? Kaya nga ako free, 'di ba? I'm free will. Kaya pwede kitang hindi sundin. Kasi I am free. I am free to contradict you. Sabi naman nung isang nagsabi, kaya mo lang naman sinabi yan, that's why you defy my order is because you want to prove to me that you are free. So in a sense, your decision to defy my order was only predetermined to my to my to my ano, 'di ba? To my order, 'di ba? Predetermined with, because gusto mong ipatunayan, you want to prove something. Gusto mong ang patunayan na malaya ka, that's why you defy my order, no? In a sense, your response was predetermined with the intention to prove that you are correct. So parang ganyan ang usapan, no? Na so the point is, meron ngang um, there are possible justifications, or there are possible arguments in saying that maybe free will is not really true at all. So in other words, ang gusto natin establish that meron ngang argument, there is an argument or a debate whether or not there really exists such thing as a free will or a free intellect. So merong argument. Pero for Immanuel Kant, ibahin mo si Immanuel Kant, because parang in the perspective of Immanuel Kant, parang nakakapagod na kung i-argue pa natin kung may free will o wala. So the most safer way, and perhaps also the most rational way, is to accept that there really exists such thing as free will and free intellect, na meron nga. So for Immanuel Kant, ayaw na niyang pahirapan pa yung usapan, no? Let's just admit the fact that at certain point we really freely decide for our own actions. Tayo yung kusang nagdedesisyon para sa ating sarili. So, yan ang isa sa mga presumptions. So, of course, there are reasons why we should presume the existence of free will. There are practical reasons. So, unang-una is that mas mabigat yung isang bagay, no, na pag ginawa mo, na ito ay ginawa mo ng kusang loob mong ginawa, no? Kung halimbawa may isang tao na tumulong sa iyo, no? Bakit ka tumulong sa akin? Tumulong ako kasi robot ako. So ako talaga ay ginawa para tulungan ka. compared to tumulong ako kasi gusto kitang tulungan. So when there's an element of um, free will and free decision, mas mas mabigat, mas ma-appreciate natin ang isang bagay kung ito ay kusang loob ginawa, no? Compared to mga bagay na ginawa natin because we are simply inclined to do such action. So may pagkakaiba, no? May pagkakaiba, mas mabigat or mas matimbang yung isang bagay ay ginawa mo na kusang loob mong ginawa. So nagtanong dito si Miss Lara. Sabi ni Miss Lara, paano kapag napilitan? So kung ikaw ay napilitan, that means may ibang factor, no, that influences the action. And what factor is that? Ito yung yun nga, tama itong question ni Miss Lara, no? Paano kapag napilitan? So if napilitan, in other words, may interference from another party, no? Or maybe from a third person perspective, merong interference. So that means pagka ganyan, the action is devoid of free will. So hindi yun siya, hindi kusang loob na ginawa yun. Pero ang the point that you want to prove here, what the point that Immanuel Kant was trying to say is that meron nga, no, because hindi naman lahat ng bagay pinipilit ka na gawin, no, or mayroong other factors that influences your action. The point is, it's possible. Ang gustong sabihin ni Immanuel Kant, that it's possible that we freely decide our actions. That there are occasions that we ourselves freely decide for our actions. Yan ang point ni Immanuel Kant. Ayan, so, yes, Miss Lara, pagka napilitan ka, so hindi na yun, it's not an action that is out of your volition. Yung ibig sabihin ng volition, your voluntariness to perform a certain action. So, pag napilitan ka, there is an absence of free will. So which will fall in yung argument natin later, yung the three moral prerequisites. Dito sa moral postulates, yes, you're welcome, Miss Lara. Dito sa moral postulates, gustong ni Immanuel Kant na yes, at certain point it's possible that we freely decide our action. And then for Immanuel Kant, let's make it a moral postulate, no? That totoo, no, that we decide for our actions. Morally speaking, mas matimbang yung sinasabi ko, mas matimbang kung ang isang bagay ay ginawa out of our own volition, no? Tinulungan ka dahil gusto kitang tulungan, no? So you will appreciate the deed, no? You will appreciate the action because kusang ginusto niya yung tumulong, no? Pwede namang hindi siya tumulong, pwedeng tingnan ka lang niya, no? Pero the mere fact na tinulungan ka, then you appreciate the good action. So kasi pagka iba yung usapan, no, to give you another example, sa panliligaw, no? Ang isang lalaki halimbawa ay nanliligaw, sa isang babae, no? Of course, as a woman, you appreciate the action, no? you appreciate kahit pa man sabihin man natin hindi mo nagustuhan yung ginawa niya, hindi mo na nagustuhan yung isang tao, uh, yet you appreciate the intention, no? Ay, gustuhan niya, no? Niligaw siya, nagustuhan niya ako. And it was out of his own, no, personal decision, no? Ligawan niya ako, no? And you appreciate that, no? As a woman, as a lady, no? May manligaw sa iyo, no? You appreciate the intention. Pero what if later on, malaman mo na hindi pala yung kusang loob niya na ligawan ka para dahil gusto ka niya, kundi iba pala siyang pakay, no? For example, what if kaya siya nanligaw dahil meron pala silang usapan ng kanyang kaibigan, no, na pustahan tayo na pagligawan ko tong babae na to, sagutin ako niya, sasagutin niya ako, no? So pag sinagot ako, mananalo ako, bigyan mo ko 1,000. Pag binasted ako naman magbibigay ng 1,000. Meron silang pustahan. So what if, as a woman, you learned later on na kaya ka pala niligawan nung, lalo na pag crush mo, no? Niligawan ka ng crush mo at nalaman mo na kaya ka niligawan dahil nagkaroon sila ng pustahan, nag-usapan sila na may usapan silang kaya liligawan ka para pasagutin, no? At pag sinagot mo siya ay mananalo siya ng 1,000. So, would you be able to appreciate the action of panliligaw upon learning na yun pala ay dahil sa pera, no? So, just to emphasize the point that mas maganda yung you perform a certain good deed when it is done out of your own free will. Yan ang point ni Immanuel Kant. So, since we have a good reason to believe that there exists a free will, then let us presume that there is indeed such thing as a free will. Yan ang point ni Immanuel Kant diyan sa kanyang moral postulate. Ang pangalawang moral presumption ni Immanuel Kant is that there is such thing as an immortal soul. So there is an immortality of the human soul. And so bakit kailangang karoon ng human soul? So of course, in trying to understand this what is proposed by Kant dito sa kanyang moral postulate, ay syempre hindi mawawala yung personal background ni Immanuel Kant, because Immanuel Kant, he is a Protestant theologian. He's a Protestant theologian. So in a sense, Immanuel Kant is also a believer himself. He is a Christian, Protestant, and a believer. So, and personally, Immanuel Kant is really a religious person also. So, when he writes, syempre nandun yung personal influence niya upon his writing. And so, naturally, lalabas din sa kanyang panulat, no, that he would be inclined to say that there exists an immortal or an eternal human soul. Ayan, so another possible reason is that maybe Immanuel Kant would want us to expand our horizons, that we do not limit only to this worldly existence, no? If we are going to put a limit on our physical reality, ito lang buhay natin sa mundo, our mundane world, then if there is a possibility to have an afterlife, kung meron ka pang extension sa buhay mo in the next life, why not, no? Why not? So Immanuel Kant allowed us to explore this the different another dimension of human reality, no? That there might be a indeed a human soul, no? Because yun nga, if we simply limit our self to the mundane reality of this world, iba pa rin yung you you put your hope, no, to an eternal reality. Iba pa rin yun eh, yung kumbaga, I think it's a natural and innate desire for a human person that wala lang, gusto lang talaga nilang maniwala in an afterlife, no? And maybe they would say or they would think that wala namang masama din kung maniwala tayo in an afterlife, no? After all, it's not a loss, no? So, medieval philosophers like Blaise Pascal, no? Baga, wala namang masama kung maniwala ka, at least if meron talaga, o at least pasok ka, no? Kung wala naman, wala ring mawawala sa iyo, no? Yung wager argument nitong si Blaise Pascal, no? So similar to this, let's presume an immortality of the human soul. So the third moral postulate is the existence of God, no? So why do we presume that God really exists? Is that wala, kung itong sinasabi nating afterlife, yung buhay natin sa kabilang mundo, would not make any sense at all kung walang existence of a supreme being. So there's an ultimate divine being that would give meaning to all of this, no? Having an eternal life, and then you'll be united perhaps with this supreme being after your worldly existence. So wala namang masama, no, to desire for a union with an almighty being. So everything would make sense, no, when you put God into the picture. No, parang in other words, parang liliwanag yung buhay mo, magkaroon ng hope. We look at the brighter side of life, that well, anyway, after all, there is salvation at the end of the tunnel, no? So any challenge in life, merong salvation, merong solution. So in every dark tunnel, merong exit. There is light at the end of every tunnel. Ang saying, no, as the saying goes. So yan ang ano ni Immanuel Kant, no, the three moral postulates. So do you have comments before we proceed with the three moral prerequisites, no, related to this discussion? So I hope nabasa niyo itong especially itong the existence of a supreme being, and discuss pa natin na yan si Friedrich Nietzsche, Sigmund Freud, no? It's a very interesting reading. Ni-research namin yan, no? And then any question, clarification, comments, reaction, any feedback on the reading? Meron? Or natutulog na kayo dyan? Hindi kayo interesado sa lesson natin, sa topic natin, no? At walang tanong because we don't care about the topic, the subject. So at least meron man lang mga ano dyan, pag-iisip nyo dyan na related to the class, no? Pag binasa mo to, tapos may clarification kayo sa chapter, di namin to naintindihan, clarification lang, pa-elaborate nito, ayan. Or do you agree with the moral postulates proposed by Immanuel Kant? Ayan. No? Para may ano naman tayo, exchange naman nito sa class, no? Para hindi ako lang yung mag-ano dito. Oh, let's hear from Wayne. Go ahead, Wayne. You can use your mic. Sinong gumawa sa kanya? If we ask Saint Thomas Aquinas, if he is a divine being, bakit kailangan pang may gumawa sa kanya? He is a divine being nga, di ba? If you understand the definition of a divine being, a supreme being, so being the supreme being of all beings, then bakit kailangan pa siyang i-create? It is his nature of being an almighty being. So hindi siya object na kailangan mong i-create. No, that for example, any object would not be capable to create himself, no? Kumbaga, hindi pa siya nag-exist, but prior to his own existence, meron siyang capability to create himself. No, like human being, do you create yourself? No? Are you somebody who has no parents? Of course not, no? Even in the Christian theology, Jesus Christ ay nanggaling din kay Mary, no? So walang nilalang na kusang loob na lang bigla na lang nag-appear, ganyan. So by definition, no, if we have a common understanding of what is a supreme being, God as a supreme being, meaning God is the most powerful of all beings. So in other words, ba't kailangan pa niya, why would God be dependent for another being, for him to exist, no? Kumbaga ako, Diyos ako, pero kailangan ko ng ibang nilalang para lumikha sa akin. So, ba't pa ako naging Diyos if I am not powerful enough to become who I am? So, if we ask the theologian, Saint Thomas Aquinas, the question itself is already wrong, no? Because by definition of what is a God, it already includes the characteristic of being a powerful being, no? So being that as he is, being God as he is, an almighty being, maybe an almighty being is something that does not need to be created, no? If he is kumbaga yun ang a priori existence ba, na by definition, if we understand really what is meant by a being that is called God, then it's not something like an object like the physical universe that needs to be created. So, being God himself, hindi na niya kailangan ng creator. So, if I would refer to Saint Thomas Aquinas, who would be our another moral philosopher that we will discuss after Aristotle. So, that was a very interesting question, Wayne. Thank you for asking that question also. Anything else? Okay ba sa'yo yun, Wayne, yung response ko dun sa tanong mo? Or hindi, or, or hindi pa rin acceptable sa'yo na okay, kasi ano yan eh, I think it's you hear that in social media, no? Ginamit pa nila yung The Young Einstein. So from a series, yung pamagat ng series na yan, yung bata na si Sheldon, The Young Sheldon, tapos may yung argument with a priest, no? Tinanong ni kasi itong si Sheldon ay magaling sa Big Bang Theory kasi scientist siya, no? Future scientist dun sa series na yon. And then there's an episode na may nandun yung pari, tapos nagsimba si the young Sheldon, tapos tinatanong niya yung pari during the homily, no? So it is also the it's all in fact it is a philosophical question. So bago pa man yung palabas na yan, ay it's an argument in the medieval period, no? So when we talk about creation, God created the world, but in the first place, who created God? That's a question by skeptics. So tinanong na rin yan ng kapanahon na ni Saint Thomas Aquinas, who created God? So the response is, yun nga, hindi lang si Saint Thomas Aquinas ang nagsagot niya, no? Marami sila, no? Si Saint Anselm also, meron siyang ontological argument. But what we understand with the concept God, babasahin nyo yun, no? Before we start, after we discuss Aristotle, I will send another selection of readings that includes yung Saint Anselm's ontological argument, na wherein Saint Anselm argued that by our merely with our own understanding of the concept of what God is, kasi yung God is that which the greatest of all being. Baga, yun na yung pinaka kapangyarihan sa lahat that you could ever think of, you could ever imagine. Kasi yun nga yung God eh. Kung if you imagine, for example, si Thor, no, is a very powerful, or si Wonder Woman, a very powerful being, then God must be the most supreme of all beings, being the creator of the universe and all. So meaning, God must have no imperfections um, by mere definition as a supreme almighty being. So siya na yung pinaka superlative of all, no? Being a God, by definition, being God himself. Pero syempre meron din yang but at this point it is not yet we will have a proper time to discuss that topic, no, when we reach medieval period, before we discuss or the moment we discuss Saint Thomas Aquinas, and also Saint Augustine. Very interesting yung discussion na yan. We will arrive in that topic later after we discuss Aristotle. So, very interesting ang argumentation yan. For example, no, yung argument of evil, no, dami rin eh. Kasi yung una, we question, God is just there are characteristics of the divine, the divine being. So, unang-una is all-knowing. God knows. God as all-knowing. Omniscience, no? God as omniscient being. God as an omniscient being. So, being God, so He knows everything. He knows the past. He knows the future. He knows the present, no? So, and also, part of that argument is that Kahit saan ka man, di ba? Kahit saan ka man, God knows where you are located. No? God is all-knowing. Also, God is all-powerful. No? God is the most powerful of all being. Siya makapangyarihan sa lahat. So, in other words, walang di niya kayang gawin. No? Lahat ay posibleng pwedeng magawa ng Diyos. No? Being an almighty, powerful being. Uh, Another argument is the omnipresence of God. God can be present everywhere and anywhere. So, saan ka man, saan ka man, you seek God's presence, God is present anywhere. Parang ganyan, no? So, omnipresence, omniscience, omnivolent being. Omnivolent being. God as all-powerful. And God is all good. So, uh, omni omnivolent being, no? God is all good. So, marami yan, no, mga characteristics na lahat ay superlative. But may ano din, actually may ano diyan, there is also an argument na when we talk about the presence of evil, no, because there is the possibility of evil in the world, no, which is a fact, no, may nangyayaring masama, no? There is evil in the world, no? Could be willed by men, maaring intentionally made by man-made ang evil, or it could be also be part of nature, no? That nature really have um, for example, yung mga natural calamities, ganyan, which is not man-made, obviously. Pwedeng man-made, maybe the destruction of the planet, the destruction of the environment that caused or that had an effect on nature, nagkaroon ng maybe sabihin natin lumakas yung typhoon because of climate change, and the reason for climate change is that tayo yung nagsumira ng ating ozone layer, for example, yan. Karoon ng global warming, pwedeng man-made, no? So, but whether man-made or not, the fact is that there exists evil in the world. Yan ang argument ng sinagot naman ni Saint Augustine, no? So, of course, merong sagot si Saint Augustine dyan, which is, I'm saying, we will have a proper time to discuss when we reach medieval period. So, at this point, ito lang muna itong argument na ito. The three moral postulates. So, for Immanuel Kant, parang it's a waste of time to argue, no? To debate whether God exists or not. But there are rational justifications. There are reasons to believe. There are good reasons to believe that that when we believe in the existence of a supreme being, parang magic, it would suddenly create a positive environment, magiging optimist ka, there would be a brighter world for you, no? There is hope in the world when you believe in the existence of a supreme being, no? Parang meron kang hope, naniwala ka nga, well, after all, there is God, ang tawag nating divine providence, no? There is God who would provide to us all our needs. So, sinasabi natin hindi tayo bibigyan ng problema na hindi nating kayang solusyonan. And yung we believe in divine providence, that God at some point nagbibigay ng grace, blessings, no? Bigay ng grasya sa atin, no? that we will be provided, no, in one way or another. So in other words, may in a Christian point of view, may hope in the world, no, when you believe in the existence of a supreme being. Ganyan. So thank you for that question, no? Sino nga ulit yung nagtanong nito? Si Wayne, no? Si Wayne. So thank you, Wayne, for sharing that question. Anyone else? Before we proceed with the second part, no, yung three moral prerequisites